I didn't know my life was about to split cleanly in two over a single sentence. Either you babysit my sister's kids every weekend, my boyfriend said, his voice flat but confident, or we're done. He said it like he already knew the answer, like I would sigh, feel guilty, and fold. I didn't. I looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time in weeks. The way his jaw was set, the way he wasn't asking, wasn't negotiating. He was deciding for me, deciding how my time would be spent, deciding that my weekends, my exhaustion, my limits didn't matter. And in that moment, something inside me went very still. Not my problem, I said. Then I picked up my keys and walked out. I'm Zara, 30 years old, a warehouse supervisor in Jacksonville. I work 50 hours a week managing inventory, people, pressure, and physical exhaustion. My Saturdays are sacred, not because I'm lazy, but because they're the only time my body and mind get to breathe. And for the last 2 months, those Saturdays had been quietly stolen from me. By chaos, by guilt, by 3 badly behaved children who weren't mine, by a boyfriend who thought love meant unpaid labor. I didn't yell, I didn't cry, I didn't slam the door. I just left. That night, I sat in my garage working on my truck, grease on my hands, a cold beer sweating beside me. The air felt lighter than it had in weeks. I slept better than I had in months. By Sunday morning, my phone was full of angry messages, accusations, guilt trips, words like selfish, unsupportive, heartless. What I didn't know yet, what none of them knew, was that walking away didn't just end a relationship. It triggered a chain of consequences that would crash directly into their front door. Babysitters quitting mid-shift, friends disappearing, money bleeding away, authorities getting involved, and eventually, a truth so ugly it would force everyone to face what they'd been enabling all along. They thought I abandoned them. But sometimes, the most dangerous thing you can do to irresponsible adults is stop protecting them from the fallout of their own choices. And this is the story of what happened after I said no. Before anyone decided I was the villain, before the word selfish started flying around like a weapon, there was a time when everything felt easy. My name is Zara. I was 30 when this happened, and at that point in my life, I wasn't looking for drama. I worked as a warehouse supervisor, long shifts, heavy responsibility, constant noise and movement. I managed people twice my age, solved problems that never stopped coming, and went home with aching feet and a head that wouldn't shut off until late at night. So when I met Marek, what drew me to him wasn't fireworks, it was calm. We met 6 months earlier at a friend's birthday gathering downtown. He was leaning against the bar, wearing a black button-down, listening more than he talked. When he smiled, it wasn't performative. It felt selective, like he didn't waste energy on things he didn't mean. He worked in nightlife management, long weekend nights, weekdays mostly free. I worked brutal weekdays, protected weekends. On paper, it made sense. We joked about being opposite schedule soulmates. When I was off, he was coming home. When he slept in, I was already halfway through a shift. The first few months were good, comfortable, predictable in the best way. We'd spend Sundays cooking together. He liked to hover in the kitchen, stealing bites before things were done. He listened when I talked about work, really listened, asked questions, remembered details. That's why, when he talked about his family, I didn't immediately tense up. He had a younger sister, Elena, 25, single mom, 3 kids under 8. He always said it with a sigh, like a disclaimer. She's had it rough, he told me once. Different dads, no support. She's just trying to survive. I believed him. I wanted to. The first time I met the kids, I understood immediately that rough was doing a lot of work in that sentence. Caden, 7, had eyes that never seemed to settle. Too alert, too sharp. Bryn, 5, touched everything like it owed her something. And Tessa, 3, screamed, not in distress, but in demand. High-pitched, constant, piercing. There were no rules, no bedtime, no structure. The TV stayed on. Snacks appeared whenever someone cried loudly enough. Elena would scroll her phone, laugh at something on social media, and say things like, "Kids are wild, right?" As if chaos were a personality trait instead of a warning sign. At first, I stayed quiet. I wasn't their mother, I wasn't their aunt, I was just the girlfriend. The shift didn't happen all at once, it crept in. One Saturday, Marek asked, casually, "Hey, would you mind staying in tonight? Elena really needs a break." Just this once, I agreed. That night was exhausting. Caden threw toys, Bryn dumped cereal across my kitchen floor like confetti. Tessa screamed for ice cream until her voice went hoarse. I told myself it was temporary. Then it happened again and again. Soon it wasn't a request. It was an assumption. "We can't go out unless someone watches the kids," Marek would say, already reaching for his jacket. "You're home anyway," he added once, smiling like it was a compliment. That sentence stuck with me. "You're home anyway." As if rest was empty space. As if my time existed to be filled with someone else's responsibilities. I started noticing other things too. How Elena never adjusted her plans. How Marek never pushed back on her behalf, but expected me to bend instead. How my weekends quietly stopped being mine. I ignored the discomfort longer than I should have. Because I cared. Because I didn't want to seem cold. Because women are taught that endurance is the same thing as kindness. But every ignored feeling leaves a mark. And by the time Marek gave me that ultimatum, the cracks had already been there for weeks. I just hadn't let myself see them yet. The thing about boundaries is that you don't notice them until someone starts erasing them. At first it was subtle. Marek would bring up Elena's situation more often, always framed as concern, never as expectation. "She barely sleeps," he said once, rubbing his face like he was the one exhausted. "She doesn't get time for herself. She deserves a break." Each sentence landed softly, but together they formed something heavier. A narrative. One where Elena was drowning, and the unspoken solution was me. Saturday nights became the problem. That was when Elena wanted to go out. That was when Marek wanted to be with her. And that was when I needed, desperately, to rest. The first real crack happened the night Caden threw a hammer at my TV. I had stepped into the kitchen for maybe 30 seconds. When I heard the crash, my stomach dropped before I even saw the screen flickering, the spiderweb of damage spreading like ice. Caden stood there breathing hard, fists clenched, eyes wild. "He got mad," Elena said lightly from the couch. "He doesn't like loud commercials." I remember staring at the broken screen, my heart pounding, thinking about how close that hammer had been to Tessa's head, or Bryn's, or mine. Later that night, after they left, I told Marek I couldn't keep doing this. "They're not bad kids," he said immediately, defensive. "They just need patience." "They need parents," I replied, "and boundaries." The room went quiet in that way that isn't peaceful. It's tense, like something fragile had been dropped, but not yet shattered. "You're saying you won't help my family?" he asked. "I'm saying your sister needs actual childcare," I said carefully. "Not guilt, not favors, not me." From that moment on, the pressure changed. He stopped asking and started telling. "She already made plans. I told her we'd handle it. This is what couples do." That phrase again. This is what couples do. I started to feel like my role had been rewritten without my consent. Not a partner. A solution. Every weekend I watched my life shrink a little more. My hobbies went untouched. My truck sat half-finished. My neighbor Adler, who used to stop by for a beer, started asking why he never saw me anymore. I laughed it off, but inside something was tightening. I noticed how Marek never offered to take the kids to his place, never rearranged his schedule, never canceled his plans. The sacrifice was always mine. And the worst part? When I said no, even gently, I was treated like I was doing something wrong, like I was failing a test I never agreed to take. By the time Marek told me I was expected to babysit because he'd already promised Elena, I knew something was coming. I just didn't know it would come in the form of a choice meant to corner me. But once someone shows you they're willing to threaten a relationship to get compliance, the relationship is already over. Last Saturday didn't start with a fight. That's what makes it dangerous. It started like any other. Quiet morning, sunlight filtering through the blinds, the rare luxury of not setting an alarm. I was in the kitchen, barefoot on cool tile, making coffee strong enough to erase the week from my bones. Marek walked in, already dressed. Not casual dressed, going out dressed. That was my first warning. "Hey," he said, leaning against the counter, too relaxed. "Just so you know, I told Elena you'd watch the kids tonight." I didn't answer right away. I stared at the coffee swirling in my mug, the steam curling upward like it was trying to escape. "You told her," I repeated. "Yeah," he said. "She's already got plans. We're checking out that new club on Riverside." Something cold slid down my spine. "I didn't agree to that," I said. He sighed, not frustrated, annoyed, as if I were being difficult on purpose. "I can't cancel," he said. "She's counting on us." Us. I set the mug down slowly. My hands were steady, but my chest felt tight. "Then find a babysitter," I said. He laughed, just a little. "You are the babysitter." The words hung between us, heavy and ugly. I work 50 hours a week, I said. Saturday night is my time to rest. I'm not spending it chasing your sister's kids around my apartment while she goes drinking. They're not that bad once you get used to them. Marek, I said, my voice sharp now. One of them threw a hammer at my TV. Another destroyed my kitchen. The youngest screams for hours. They're out of control because nobody parents them. You're being dramatic. The dismissal stung more than the words. I'm being honest. That's when his expression changed. The patience drained out of his face, replaced by something harder. Look, he said, lowering his voice like this was reasonable. Elena needs support. She's a single mom. We're the only family she has. I waited. Either you step up and help, he continued, or maybe we're not as compatible as I thought. There it was. Not a request, not a compromise, a weapon. The room went completely silent. I could hear the hum of the refrigerator, the distant sound of a car passing outside. In that stillness, I realized something with startling clarity. He wasn't asking for help. He was demanding obedience. I looked at him and felt something detach inside me. Clean, surgical. You know what? I said, standing up. You're right. We're not compatible. He blinked. What? I'm not the person you get to volunteer without asking, I said. And I'm not sacrificing my weekends so your sister can avoid responsibility. Zara! I grabbed my keys. Good luck finding someone else to exploit. His face hardened. Exploit? I'm asking you to help my family. You're demanding I give up my time so someone else can party, I said. That's not helping. That's enabling. Don't walk out on me, he snapped. You gave me 2 options, I said, opening the door. I chose the one where I keep my self-respect. I walked out before he could say anything else. My heart was pounding, but I didn't look back. I didn't know yet that this moment, the quiet click of the door closing, was the first domino, and that once it fell, everything else would come crashing down. The drive home felt unreal. Street lights blurred past my windshield, orange and gold streaks cutting through the dark. My hands were tight on the steering wheel, but my breathing was steady, too steady, like my body hadn't caught up with what I'd just done. I had walked away. 6 months of a relationship ended in less than 5 minutes, and instead of panic, I felt light. When I pulled into my driveway, the garage door rattled open, the familiar smell of oil and metal greeting me like an old friend. I changed into worn jeans and an oversized t-shirt, the kind I never wore around Marek because he liked me put together. I worked on my truck for hours, took things apart slowly, methodically, let my hands do what my mind couldn't yet process. Later, Adler wandered over with 2 beers. Thought I heard freedom in the air, he said, handing one to me. I laughed, the sound surprising both of us. That night I slept hard. No alarms, no screaming, no guilt. Sunday morning was quieter than I'd ever heard it, until I checked my phone. Dozens of messages. Marek first, then Elena. You're unbelievable. Do you know what you did to us? We had to cancel everything. No one would watch the kids. You're selfish. This is what family does. I scrolled through them slowly, my chest tightening, not with regret, but with clarity. They weren't upset because they missed me. They were upset because they lost a resource. I didn't respond. I grabbed my fishing gear and drove out before noon, the water calm, the sun warm on my skin. For the first time in weeks, my shoulders relaxed. Still, the questions crept in. Should I have tried harder? Was I too cold? Did I abandon someone who needed help? But every time doubt surfaced, my mind replayed the image of Caden wandering the apartment during his rages, of Bryn dumping flour like it was a game, of Tessa screaming until her face turned red, of Marek telling me, "You're the babysitter." That wasn't love. That was entitlement. Midweek, Marek tried again, a softer tone this time. Maybe we overreacted, he texted. We could talk. Talk, not apologize. I realized then that even if I went back, nothing would change. The expectations would still be there, just quieter, more manipulative. I deleted the message. What I didn't know yet was that while I was reclaiming my peace, reality was starting to close in on them, and it was about to get very loud. The first weekend after I walked away, I didn't hear anything. No texts, no calls, just silence. At the time, I thought they were cooling off, regrouping, maybe even, naively, reflecting. I was wrong. The updates started coming from Stellan, a friend of mine who worked as an electrician and happened to live in the same apartment complex as Marek and Elena. He'd always been neutral, never involved in our relationship drama, which is why I believed him when he said, "You're not missing anything, but it's getting messy." Apparently, Saturday afternoon had turned into panic mode. Elena posted on Facebook looking for a babysitter. 3 kids, same night, short notice. The responses were immediate and sobering. $15 an hour, $20 an hour, minimum 4 hours. Stellan told me Marek stood on the balcony doing the math out loud, his voice sharp with disbelief. That's $80 just so she can go out for drinks? For the first time, they were seeing it, what my time had been worth. They found someone willing to do it cheaper, $40 total. Too good to be true. She lasted 2 hours. Caden had a violent outburst and threw a toy at her head. She called Marek screaming, demanded to be picked up immediately, and left without waiting for payment. According to Stellan, Elena was furious. Kids will be kids, she kept saying, pacing the living room. Week 2, they tried a professional service. $25 an hour. 3 kids. Minimum booking. $200 for the night. Marek covered most of it. Elena couldn't. She made barely $300 a week working part-time retail. They went out anyway. Stayed exactly 2 hours. The sitter left detailed notes. Professional language. Phrases like challenging behaviors and lack of consistent boundaries. She declined future bookings. By week 3, the pattern was clear. Friends stopped answering calls on Saturday afternoons. Family members suddenly had plans. Everyone had an excuse. Stellan told me he watched Marek and Elena get dressed up one night, full makeup, cologne, heels, then sit on the porch for 3 hours making phone calls. They never left. They ordered pizza and stayed home in silence. It was like watching reality hit them with a brick, Stellan said. Midweek, Marek texted me again. This time it was almost friendly. Maybe we could just be friends, he wrote. And you could help out occasionally with the kids. I stared at the screen, my jaw tight. Translation: stay useful, lose the relationship, keep the labor. I didn't reply. Meanwhile, my life was changing in quieter ways. My weekends were mine again. I finished rebuilding my truck engine, started a woodworking project I'd abandoned months ago. My stress levels dropped so noticeably that my supervisor commented on it. You seem more focused lately, he said. Clear-headed. It was amazing how much mental space freed up when I wasn't managing someone else's crisis. But the real escalation, the part no one expected, was already in motion. Because when people can't exploit help anymore, they sometimes make choices far worse than asking, and those choices were about to put innocent kids in real danger. I found out the worst part by accident. It was a quiet Tuesday evening when Adler knocked on my door. He didn't joke this time. No beer in his hand. His face was tight in a way that made my stomach drop before he even spoke. Zara, he said slowly, I need to tell you something, and you're not going to like it. We sat at my kitchen table, the same table Bryn had once covered in flour like fake snow. Adler folded his hands, then unfolded them, like he didn't know what to do with the information he was carrying. I work from home, he said. My desk faces the parking lot where Marek and Elena live. I nodded. I already knew where this was going, and still, I wasn't ready. I've been noticing a pattern, he continued. The sisters get dressed up, heels, makeup, music blasting, then they leave together. And the kids? I asked quietly. They're still inside. My chest tightened. How do you know no one's there? I asked. Adler's jaw clenched. Because the 7-year-old comes outside looking for them. The room seemed to tilt. I've watched Caden walk around the complex in pajamas, Adler said, 10 o'clock at night, asking neighbors if they've seen his mom. I felt sick. Apparently, once they ran out of babysitters, once money and guilt stopped working, they made a different choice. They left the kids alone. At first, short periods. A quick drink, an hour. Then longer, full evenings. Caden, 7 years old, was expected to watch his 5-year-old sister and 3-year-old sister while their mother went clubbing. No adult, no phone nearby, no food prepared. Just chaos, unattended. Adler told me he watched this happen 3 times in 2 weeks. That's when I called CPS, he said quietly. I covered my mouth with my hand. Part of me wanted to cry, part of me wanted to scream, and part of me felt something colder, heavier. If I had stayed, if I had kept babysitting, if I had kept absorbing the chaos, if I had kept enabling, this might never have come to light. But at what cost? The investigation moved fast. Neighbors reported screaming, kids wandering unsupervised, dirty apartment, no food in the fridge, no routines, no structure, no safety. CPS found evidence the kids had been left alone for 6 to 8 hours at a time. Several babysitters had quit mid-shift over the past month, leaving the children alone until the sisters came back. Something I hadn't even known. The truth was worse than I imagined. That night, I sat alone in my living room, lights off, listening to the hum of my refrigerator. My chest hurt in a way that had nothing to do with heartbreak. I felt guilty, not because I left, but because part of me wondered if I could have stopped it sooner. Then another thought followed, sharper and clearer. No, I wasn't the problem. I was the barrier they removed. This was the bottom. For them. For the kids. For the illusion that help meant covering up neglect. And from this darkness, something irreversible was about to happen. The day I realized I wasn't responsible for saving them was the day the guilt finally let go of my throat. CPS moved quickly. Court orders followed. Cold, official documents that didn't care about excuses or intentions. Elena was mandated to attend parenting classes. Random home inspections were scheduled. Proof of legitimate childcare became a requirement, not a suggestion. Her weekends were no longer hers. A court-appointed caseworker now monitored the children's welfare, their schedules, their meals, their supervision. Every detail Elena had avoided for years was suddenly unavoidable. And the kids, finally, had structure. Adler told me the screaming had decreased. The wandering stopped. The apartment, once chaotic, was being cleaned regularly. Even Caden's violent outbursts began to ease with consistency and boundaries. That's when it hit me. Walking away didn't harm those kids. It saved them. Mark didn't see it that way. He texted me after the CPS involvement became public. "This could have been avoided," he wrote, "if you had just helped like a decent person instead of abandoning us." I stared at the message, my pulse steady. He still didn't get it. I showed the text to Stellan, who laughed out loud. "She thinks this happened because you wouldn't babysit," he said, "not because they were leaving toddlers alone so they could go drinking." He shook his head. "You dodged a bullet, Zara. Imagine if you'd still been around when CPS showed up. They would have assumed you were part of it." That thought sent a chill through me. He was right. If I had stayed, I wouldn't have been a helper. I would have been an enabler, a silent accomplice. Instead, by refusing to be used, I forced the truth into the open. That realization changed something fundamental inside me. For the first time, I didn't second-guess my decision. I didn't replay conversations. I didn't imagine alternate endings. I chose myself. And in doing so, I unknowingly chose those kids too. The power had shifted, not in a dramatic confrontation, but in quiet clarity. I wasn't weak for leaving. I was strong for stopping the cycle. The fallout didn't arrive all at once. It came in waves, quiet at first, then impossible to ignore. Marek's world started shrinking. Friends who used to answer his calls stopped picking up on weekends. Family members developed sudden, permanent plans every Saturday night. Invitations dried up. Smiles became tight. Conversations ended faster than they used to. People didn't say it out loud, but they didn't have to. Everyone knew. Everyone knew about the CPS visits, about the kids being left alone, about babysitters quitting mid-shift. And once that kind of truth surfaces, it changes how people look at you. Elena was furious. At the caseworker, at the neighbors, at the system, at everyone except herself. She posted vague rants on social media about toxic people and fake support and how real men step up when kids are involved. The irony was almost painful. Marek tried to defend her at first, tried to explain, tried to soften the story. It didn't work. People pulled back anyway. Because defending neglect doesn't make you loyal, it makes you complicit. Meanwhile, I watched all of this from a distance, quietly, deliberately removed. I didn't celebrate. I didn't gloat. I didn't say I told you so. I simply lived my life. And that, somehow, seemed to bother them more than anger ever could. Marek sent one last message a few weeks later. "You really don't feel bad about any of this?" I thought about the kids, now on routines, eating regular meals, sleeping in real beds. I thought about Caden, calmer now that someone was actually watching him. I thought about how close I'd come to being blamed for something I didn't create. And I answered honestly. "I feel bad it was necessary," I wrote, "but not that it happened." He never replied. 6 months passed. I got promoted to department manager. More responsibility, better pay. My supervisor told me I'd been more decisive, more focused. He was right. It's easier to lead when you're not exhausted from carrying other people's chaos. I started dating again, not because I was lonely, but because I was open. That's how I met Jacob. He had his own place, his own career. No dramatic family crises that required my unpaid labor. We did normal things, dinners, movies, quiet projects side by side. One night he looked at me and said, "You seem really grounded." I smiled. I learned how to say no. He nodded. That's attractive. It felt revolutionary. Back in Marek's world, nothing really changed, except everything. Elena completed his mandated parenting classes. He worked more hours to pay for legitimate childcare. His partying stopped, not because he wanted to change, but because he had no choice. The kids were safer, and that mattered more than anyone's pride. As for me, I didn't win by destroying anyone. I won by walking away, by letting the truth stand on its own. Saturday mornings are my favorite now. I wake up without an alarm. Sunlight spills across the floor. The house is quiet in a way that feels earned, not empty. I make coffee and drink it slowly, not bracing myself for screaming or crisis or someone else's expectations. Just peace. 6 months after everything fell apart, I finally understood what that ultimatum had really been. It wasn't about helping family. It wasn't about compassion. It was about control. They didn't want support. They wanted silence. Someone to absorb the chaos so they wouldn't have to face it. Walking away didn't make me heartless. It made me honest. The kids are doing better now. That's the part that matters most. Structure, supervision, real parenting, things they should have had all along. Sometimes love looks like stepping in, and sometimes it looks like stepping back far enough for the truth to become unavoidable. Elena still tells her version of the story. In it, I'm the villain, the woman who abandoned family, the one who didn't step up. I let her have that story because I have my life. I have my work, my weekends, my boundaries, my quiet mornings. I have a relationship built on mutual respect instead of obligation. I have the certainty that my time has value and that anyone who truly cares about me will treat it that way. Here's what I learned and what I want you to remember. If someone pressures you to sacrifice your peace for their convenience, they are not asking for help. They are testing how much of yourself you're willing to give away. People who respect you will respect your boundaries. People who don't respect you. Sometimes the most helpful thing you can do, for yourself and for others, is refuse to enable behavior that harms everyone involved. I didn't lose a relationship that night. I gained my life back, and I'll never apologize for choosing it.